Okay, so you may notice that this is the third video where I'm wearing this shirt. That's mainly just because of the fact that I'm not really going out over the next few days, and I just couldn't be bothered to change it to another one, so just a lazy shirt for now. But today's video is going to be... ta-da! So, I decided to go a little bit all out for this one, and after building Tamiya and building one Schumacher, I've decided to give Kyosho a try, and I've got the Optima Mid. So this dates back all the way to 1987, and I bought this as a replacement for the Tamiya Manta Ray, which I sold earlier this year. It was a bit sad to let that go, but the primary reason why I bought the Manta Ray was just for vintage racing. However, the reason why I sold it was because I didn't feel it was quite robust enough and quite up to the job for racing, and I wanted to go with something more robust. So I was actually tied between three things. It was either the Tamiya Top Force, which was just basically the Manta Ray but with all the upgrades. There was the Schumacher ProCat, which I was considering, had it been at price at $279, but then I saw that there was a 13.5 brushless motor limit. However, I intend to run 10.5 in a vintage buggy, and when I saw how much it was with Pro transmission at $379, this would average around the same price. However, there was a good deal on this, so this only cost, I say only, it's quite expensive still, but £329, which ended up being a lot cheaper than the ProCat. And full disclosure, I hope to never ever fork as much money out for an RC car ever again. Well, a kit, maybe something on a 110 scale, but I hope, let me just reiterate what I was trying to say. So I'm kind of hoping to not spend anywhere near as much as a 1/10 scale RC car as much as I have done on this. But nonetheless, here we are. So this is the Optima Mid. So this dates all the way back. I don't know if I already said it earlier because I have ADHD, or I need to get tested for that. But anyway, so the Optima Mid dates back to 1987. It is a competition spec 4-wheel drive radio controlled buggy, and this is what has come for vintage radio control racing, and I am hoping to have this ready and running by the Chippenham Indoor Winter Classic, which this year is the Colin Sawyer Memorial event, because sadly we lost Colin earlier this year, but here we have it, right at long last, the Optima Mid. So I actually bought this thing back in August, and it is now November, but the reason why I haven't built it yet was because I was just waiting to be able to get a few more parts. But I've got the servo, which I think should be all I need for the build, which should be fine. But time to take it to the kitchen table and finally build the Optima Mid. Right, so let's just get the box open and dive straight in. So, neatly packaged. Got the body here. Leave the spoiler. No, the spoiler's not attached to that. So, I'm saying, in comparison to the likes of Tamiya and Schumacher, I'm loving the way that it's so organised on the inside. So there's part of our bits which are attached to the box opener, and that comes. Okay, so how does that? Oh, that opens that way. Instructions there, going to need that. We've got. Put that aside. I'll put the Mid. I do believe that the spoiler actually might be amongst this. Oh, it's okay. So it's not a polycarbonate spoiler, which is okay. So it's, I want to say, an ABS spoiler. Got tyres coming out. We've got the rims coming out. Just pull the whole pressure. So that's. Double checking like a tiny little piece I haven't missed. Yes, slid out very nicely. Nice aluminium base there. Looks overall. Is that the shock? Okay, so it does include silicone oil, which I wasn't prepared for. I do have associated shock oil, which I've been using in some of my off-road stuff, as well as certain on-roads as well. But it's good to have those just included. But I don't know if I will use that stuff. But that was a quick unbox, and it's currently 25 minutes past 3 PM. I want to try and build this as quick as I can, so time to dive in and get on with building the Optima Mid. To think that this was how long this stage of the build has taken, nearly 13 hours. It could have been a lot quicker had I not made a few mistakes along the way, and that I had not dropped certain tiny bits on the floor. But we have a rolling Optima Mid at last. Now, so the next stage of this is actually to get the electronics put in. Actually, I didn't actually talk about the servo that I'm using. So I'm actually using one of these. I wanted to go for a brushless servo purely just because of you get more speeds in the torque. So 20 kg servo should be enough. and it's quite fast in comparison to its brushed counterparts. And I have put one of these in my Cougar SV, and the response is relatively good, and iMod should be perfectly serviceable for cars. There are some people who I know who've used iMod and have ran UBEX on it, and it hasn't worked in their favour, but I'm not using it for anything, you know, too boisterous, but it should do the job. Now, also in my Cougar SV, which I'm also going to be putting in this, is here we have our motor. Now, I am going to be putting brushless. I could just put brush in it just for the nostalgic purposes, but in terms of efficiency and speed, I'm going brushless just to be safe. So, I'll just get the motor out to show you what it is that I've got. So, it is a Surpass Hobby Rocket RC 10.5 ton Pro stock spec V3, and I will adjust the timing to 0 before I do fit it in the car. So I've got one of these in the Cougar SV as well, and it's actually a surprisingly good motor. Haven't raced with one in a car yet, but that will change at the Chippenham event if I end up making it to that in a couple of weeks. I think, no, it's 3 weeks, I believe, from as of recording this. But this is the motor that I will be using, and that's also on the BRCA homologation list. So if I do, because the plan is to also build a touring car at BRCA spec, so I'll use the 17.5 ton version of that, so I can do club racing with it as well. So that's the motor. Now the ESC is going to be this, which is the Hobbywing Quick Run 10BL120 G2. Now, this isn't a blinky ESC, but the thing is, with vintage racing, it's a bit laid back in terms of what you can use. There are obviously restrictions on type of motors and ESCs to use, but this is the ESC that Chippenham Model Car Club recommend for their vintage off-road racing events. And my dad also has one in his Cyber 10B, and it is a good ESC, and quite nice and compact. So, for club racing, it does say on the box that it is suitable for 110 competitions. However, whether it has a blinky mode, I don't think it does. The BRCA, it's not on the homologations list. I did ask the BRCA if there were plans to put it through the phase, but they were going to ask Hobbywing for a sample over, because this would be... You've got the Hobbywing XR10 and the Hobbywing Z Run, which is a tad more expensive, but this, I think, would be great as a budget option for those who do want to get into championship grade racing. If it doesn't have a blinky mode, I'll find out when I power it on. But I also need to pick up an XT60, which I've got lying around in my work shed somewhere. But also got to wait for the receiver. So the plan is, for this stage, is to get the timing adjusted on this to 0. I've also got, I forgot the sensor cable, which is in the box. Hopefully I got that open so I don't have to... Yeah, that I got... Yes, I will. Oh, and I'm filming. So, get the timing adjusted to 0 on this, and get it all soldered up, wired up, and fitted in the Optima Mid. So, click my fingers, let's go. Right, I thought I'd just show this off while I'm in the process of getting the electronics fitted. And yes, that soldering job doesn't look too great. I was having a few issues. Basically, my cordless one, which is... I'll just bring it in so I can show it to you. But this, which it does good for most stuff, but it doesn't produce enough heat or power. And the hottest that gets is 480 degrees. Whereas this one, this is what my dad had kicking about, and that was all it took, basically, just to get the solder onto the tabs and make sure that it sticks. So that's not going to be coming off. So not the neatest job in the world, I know, but I thought I'd show this while it's I'm getting on. So it turns out that the this quick run ESC does in fact have a blinky mode. So I was also playing around with the settings on the program card, so I had to use also this guide because the programming functions are different on this one compared to the brushed 80 amp version which I have in my MO3L. But basically, so the blinky mode is a way of indicating that the ESC complies with racing rules in championship grades or club grades. So yeah, so when it's on blinky mode, that's a way of indicating that the ESC is on the correct settings. and is fit to race and fit to go out onto the track at the likes of BRCA and Raw and other regulated radio control racing events. But at the moment, this ESC isn't on the BRC homologation. It is suitable for competition racing, as it claims on the box, but it is not yet past any stages of homologation, as far as I'm aware, or at this moment on. Also, I just thought I'd show this. So we've got the motor work, so I'll snap my fingers and we'll get it back in. And with that, it's done. Now, you're probably wondering why I've got this really ridiculously long power cable here. Now, the reason why I've actually left this long is because I do plan on putting bullet connectors to use proper racing packs with this. And the reason why I made it long is so that when I do trim the wires down to the suitable length, I can use this with the XT60 as like an extension. So I do not believe in waste of potentially useful resources. So that's what this is going to be done for. So now to get it plugged in and to get the car turned on. Transmitter on. There's our steering. So I'll just... Doesn't sound great when it's at low speed. When it's at high speed, it does feel like. Also, I'll just turn that upside down so we can send it. So we can send it. All right, so I'm happy with that. Just trying to. So I got a bit like distracted and kind of. Brain went a bit blank, but the overall buggy itself is done. Well, almost, because this was the antenna that came with it, and if you're a regular to my channel, you'll know that I like to have antennas for show only, especially on stuff like buggies and classic buggies like this one. But nah, this I'm not going to use, because instead I do actually have, thankfully, a few spares of these kicking about. It's almost a bit like that like in the Adam and Joe sketch where Star Wars did TFI Friday, like ickle, big.
That wasn't very funny. Oh, I love that. Do you want to see that again? Come on, let's see that
again. Anyway, you get the idea with that. So, gonna thread the antenna wire through the pipe. Now there is an additional hole there where you can probably put a grub screw, but I might just use it with clear glue just for assurance. But voila, there it is. Probably bend it back just for a little bit. Actually, I'll raise the camera a bit so you can... I think that'll do. But that's the overall car itself done. Now let's move on to the next phase, and that being the body. Alright, next phase of the build is the body, and you're probably wondering what the hell this thing is that's to my left. Well, this is actually part of a course that my dad is building for his crawler, and that's going to be for another video. So this is like a sort of a seesaw ramp, which is building for his Traxxas TRX4, and that'll be for another video, so I can't wait to show that off. But for now, focusing on this, and the good news is the stickers are etched, so that's going to save a lot of time cutting, and also the stickers, the window masks are etched and the decals are etched, which is brilliant, which is nice. So I've got the scissors. There were some curved scissors somewhere. Alright, here they are. Now, one thing I've heard about the window masks is that they're not 100% accurate. That was just from watching a couple of build videos, so I'm going to try and get this as dead on as possible. So I've got curved scissors, and this is also going to be very interesting, having the square holes for the body mounts. But we've got everything ready. Let's get the body prepared for painting. And there we have it. So you may have also noticed that I've had to trim it down the front as well because of the shock protectors that I've had to fit. Obviously they're going to be needed when carpet racing, and I can't race without them, so I've had to trim the nose down at the front so that the body slips on a lot better. Now, I did make a bit of an error where I did drill out, well, I say drill, I use the body reamer, but I made a hole here for the antenna, but that's a bit too far out to that side, so I had to put it right there. There is a little slot there, but I just didn't fancy my chances, and I thought it looked a little bit funny just sticking out of the window. But let's just do a transition that I've not done in a while and quickly see just how it looks on the chassis. And there you have it. So that's what it looks like currently unpainted. So rather happy with that. I'll have to definitely find a way of covering that hole, but there you go. And we're back. Now, there's 3 stages of actually painting this and decorating. Well, there's 4 if you count the decals. But if you are familiar to my channel, you'll probably know where I'm going with this. So I'm not going to go all out and use lots of colours. I'm only going to use 2 standards, which are blue and purple. But these 2 I'm going to mix to get... I'm trying to go for a lighter shade of this. So that it's like a sort of a royal blue, rather than either of these 2. But I'm going to take it to the garden. I'm not going to bother filming this because if you want to see how I do this, there are already videos out there that show how I do this method. But let's get on with the first stage. So that's phase 1 done, and I've managed to get quite a bit of colour in there, and looks relatively nice. I think, given that I only used 2, the blue ended up coming out really nicely, but the purple didn't come out quite in the way that I wanted it to, and that was because of the fact that the paint, the lid on that paint bottle broke and air got to it, and it's a bit thick and mushy in comparison to the blue. But that's that bit done. Now our next phase is to fill it in with white, and here I'm going to be using Core RC Colour White Night. And the reason why I use this stuff rather than Tamiya, because when I was ordering this from Model Sport, if you could compare the cost per milliliter to Tamiya paints rather than Core RC paints. In fact, I think my dad's got a bottle kicking around up here somewhere. Yes. So sorry, I'll just get one of these down so you can see the comparison. So yeah, the Tamiya paints are 100 millilitres, whereas these are 150 millilitres. They're roughly the same price, but this tends to offer better value. So with that being said, time to fill in the rest of the body with the Core RC whites. So here we go. And that's phase 2 done, and considering that it's winter, I did manage to get it filled in quite nicely. So there's quite a bit of paint. It is a little bit faint probably there, but doesn't quite look it from the outside. I did manage to get quite a handful of layers in there, thankfully. So there's phase 1 done. Now this is a thing that I've started doing with all my bodies. Some will say it's not needed, but it's a thing that I like to do just for assurance, and that is I'm going to back it up with this stuff, which is clear lacquer. I get swung between how to either pronounce the 2, but anyway, I've got lacquer to basically protect the inside of the paint, because I've started using this on a lot of my bodies, especially my off-road stuff where there's going to be lots of stones kicking about, and this method has worked really well for me, because normally where it gets chipped, it's helped it, it's really protected it nicely. So I've put a few layers on those bodies, and it's thankfully done the job really well. So I'm going to be doing the same with this. So I've got the clear coat ready. Gonna try and do this. Let's do this. Sorry, I just stumbled over my words then. But anyway, let's put the clear coat on. And this has returned after my dad has finished the crawler course, which will appear in a later video, I promise. But with that, it's pretty much painted. All that needs to be done now is get the protective film off, the window masks off, and then get some decals on. So I'll start off getting the window masks and film off. And there we have the stuff, the gubbins off. So that's the body done, pretty much ready for decals. So I've got them somewhere on the kitchen tables, but I'll just snap to when I've had a played around. I'm not going to put every single one on, just ones that I feel... Anyway, you'll get the idea when I do the snap. And with that, I'm going to call that done. Now, you may notice that I haven't used the typical sticker coordination, and there's certain decals that I haven't used, that like these, which are like the key, or like the signature decals that would normally go on the body. However, because of the overall colours I've gone with, whether it be, you know, the the blue and the purple. I just don't feel that the orange and yellow would work well with it. So as much as I would have liked to have put these stickers on, but I just decided not to, just because I didn't think that the colour would go well with the scheme that I'm taking. And I like I said, I don't want it to look like your average Optima Mid, so I wanted to go with something different to help it stand out just that bit more. Now in terms of, it's not the only thing I've put decals on, I'll just bring it down a crouch so it's actually on the floor, but I've actually put some decals on the spoiler, also made use of it a little bit at the back there. So that's I think that's pretty much, well, once I've got it threaded through, I need to pick up some body clips. I've got some spare ones kicking about, but here we go, and I'll get that wire tucked in actually. 3, 2, 1. And with that, I'm going to call that done. So that is it, the completed Optima Mid, my first ever attempt at a Kyosho kit, done. And now I've got to get it tested. The trouble is, it's a little bit mushy outside, and I can't really do it tomorrow because I'm going over to Taunton for one of the winter events. But and also it's a bit mushy a little bit, so I'm waiting for it to get a bit less damp. There is my usual test go-to, which is the industrial estate, and which is only a short walk from my house. But in terms of when I can test this, I will cut to then. So what was it you were saying?
Well, you need a little bit of play.
Yeah, I've got that.
In the gears, and there's yeah, it's not too tight, that's perfect, see? If I can see it moving, I can see this big gear's moving before that one, that's perfect. So why it's noisy, I really don't know.
It's just that when hang on, take your hands off of it. When it's at full pulse and the high speed, it's fine.
And do that again. It almost feels like it's coming from inside the gearbox. Come on.
Yeah, so as you probably have seen there, I've tried to get as much play as I can as possible on this, but I feel like that's about as good as I'm going to get. Even my dad looked at it while I was trying to get the play sorted, and when it's at low speeds, it's actually, it doesn't sound good, but when it gets to full speed, it does sound pretty healthy. Now for the big test. So I've taken the Optima Mid to this industrial estate that's not far from where I live. So I'll just get the car turned on. Okay, so we're on. I was worried then we're not gonna. Now I've got to be mighty careful. Now the thing about this is, I did want to be careful where I first test this because it's been raining like no one's business, and the fact that the grass will be a bit too mushy. So this is about as dry as I'm going to get. So I'm going to put it down here because I don't want to get it too wet. So just give it a little test before I send it at full power, but so far actually drives nicely. Yeah, so I'm being very light on the trigger, but let's send it. Here we go. Okay, well it's not grip rolling, which is a good thing. Yeah, talk about this, you kind of see why I want to be mighty careful. But overall, okay, well despite it being quite slippery, I'm actually really happy with that. But Yep, I think that'll do. The one thing I did not want to happen to it, it's got dirt on it. But it could have been a lot worse, but I will let this dry off. Probably take the body off, give that a wipe inside. Definitely give it a wipe because the spoiler, it's... So I'll let this dry off and then wipe it up with antibacterial wipes. But this is the Optima Mid, well, my Optima Mid, and despite it being quite slippery, it does handle pretty nicely. Now, in terms of how it actually handles on the track, I won't find out until the Chippenham Indoor Winter Classic, which this year is the Colin Sawyer Memorial event, because Colin Sawyer unfortunately passed away earlier this year, and he was a massive staple in the vintage off-road racing community, so hence the reason why the event this year is going to be in memorial to him. Colin, I really hope you'll keep doing what you're doing in the skies, and it's going to be very weird not having you there at Chippenham this Sunday. But sorry, I just needed a little... Sorry, I ended up stumbling over my words there, but the Optima Mid is pretty much good to go. Other than the wipe down, it's good to race. So the 10.5 ton brushless on it handles pretty nicely. The 20 kg brushless steering servo's paid off because it gives much better control. And I feel like I've done the right thing making this my dedicated vintage four-wheel drive off-road buggy for competition racing, because the TL01B is not up to the job, and I don't fancy putting 10 ton brushless, or no, 10.5 brushless or 10 ton brushed in that. The Manta Ray I just didn't feel was robust enough, so this I think will do me justice moving forwards. And that I'm going to leave for this video. Next week's video is actually going to be my time at the Colin Sawyer Memorial event. And as of when the time this video goes out, the event probably would have finished. So yeah, so the time I've released this video, the event would have been finished. I would have done all my races. How I would have done by then, I don't know. But either way, looking forward to it, and that will of course be next week's video. And the races in full will be over on my racing channel. But I'll save my breath for that video then, because I think this has gone on long enough. But thank you so much for watching this video, and see you next week with my time at Chippenham.